Welcome to Saturday Mourning Cartoons, the Collider weekly podcast for all things animation, including reviews and interviews, coming to you from a crack in the tile inside of your kitchen. I'll be your co-host, Sean Paul Ellis, and joining me today, he's in a Rube Goldberg machine sliding down in between the drywall. It's my co-host, Dave Trumbore. David, how you doing, buddy?
Woo-wee, you gotta check out this slide here, boy. This is fun.
Why did you come off very, very southern?
Well, I'm down here in Georgia, just
True.
being part of the culture down here. I mean, what accent would you prefer coming off of an interior wall drywall slide?
I don't know. I don't really think that any of these...
Like Cockney? Is that what
these
you want?
characters... No, definitely not.
No, nobody
maybe... I don't know. Something maybe tropical, maybe...
Something tropical?
Yeah, something tropical island specific.
No,
I'm
definitely
kidding.
not that.
No, I'm kidding. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Makes zero sense. Either way, it's a lot better than my joke about pursuing my PhD in like wall vacuuming, which makes zero sense to anyone, even in the context of this show.
It will make sense. We
in about
promise
an hour.
it will make sense in about an hour.
Yeah, hold on.
Which is funny because, so often when we're talking about a cartoon, we think, man, this cartoon was only 20 minutes long. We probably only watched one episode to be able to make our snap judgments that we're always making for these cartoons and give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down in terms of how you should spend your time. Today, I think we watched this cartoon for more time than we're actually going to talk about it.
Yep.
So we are going to really try to condense as much as we can into a fun little tin, I guess, that we're going to pack a lot of littles
Just
into
a
that
lot
tin.
of little, just cram them in like sardines.
Just
drown them in oil, preserve them, roll them up.
They're like approximately the same size as sardines, right?
They're bite size,
Oh, yeah.
more or less.
If you're wondering and have no idea what we're actually talking about, don't worry. We're going to help you out.
Yeah.
So we have mentioned previously, and we are getting a lot of heat for this, our cartoon lawyers have told us that we have to start digging into all these listener recommendations and suggestions that you've given us, and we really have to get into them. Turns out we have another one from our buddy Ben. Ben has called and he has recommended that we watch Here Come the Littles. We'll break down some of the nuance behind this. But if you remember, Ben has actually called in and he's made recommendations previously. He had recommended that we watch Kissy Fur.
Or Kissifer.
Or Kissifer, depending on
which one of us is talking at the moment.
Where in Georgia you're from.
Right.
So to help give some context, we're actually going to hear from Ben in his own words. So Ben, take it away.
What's up, Sean and Dave? This is Ben again. I'm reaching out to you because I have another cartoon I'd like to request you guys do. It's called Here Come the Littles, and it's about a civilization of little elf-like creatures that live in the walls of human beings. And there's one main kid named Henry Big that knows about them. And it lasted 3 seasons. It was one of my most favorite cartoons. I think it was the first cartoon I ever watched as a kid. So I'd love for you guys to watch it and check it out and share your input on it. My name is Ben, and you have permission to use this clip. I can't wait to see it, and thank you guys for viewing the Kissy Fur cartoon. Talk later, guys. You're awesome. Bye-bye.
I'm so glad that we have Ben's permission to be able to use this because we have been illegally using Ben's voice for user
Our
recommendations.
lawyers are so mad about
so
everything.
frustrated.
Like,
So frustrated.
You're not doing the thing we asked you to do, and you're doing the thing we asked you not to do.
We basically have one job to be able to do, and we're doing a poor job at it, so we're okay with it. I want to pause and say that a lot of you have made recommendations over social media, online. These are all fantastic.
Yeah.
We can't thank you enough for telling us to watch these specific cartoons, but guess what?
It's the whole point of the podcast to begin
Yeah.
with, honestly. Like, we want to talk about cartoons that you guys are into with you guys out there. That's the whole reason we do it.
I'm going to Oprah style the secret this and just say, we'd love to not program this show anymore. You tell us what you want us to watch and we will review it. Will that go poorly for everybody?
100%.
We 100% guarantee. That's the SMC guarantee,
Yeah.
is that it will 100% go poorly.
Which our lawyers just sent me an email. They are pretty pissed about us guaranteeing anything at 100%.
Yeah, it's weird that they could send us
Legally
cease and
binding.
desist in the middle of us doing the
They
show.
had a draft ready to go. They knew it would happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
It's still got blanks in it.
Right. They got to fill those in.
They do, guys.
But speaking of filling things in, you can go into the bio of any of our social media and you can click a button. It's going to tell you that you can suggest a cartoon to us. There's a form. Fill in what you want us to watch in that form. Or if you're like Ben, super friend Ben, you can call a phone number and you can leave us a voice message like the one that we just included. The number is 202-681-4406. This will be in all of our show notes, so don't worry about memorizing it or writing it down. So go and call that number. Leave something. We will review yours and give priority if you call and leave a message. It also ensures that you get the proper shout out. And the most important thing is that we will guarantee, because of our cartoon lawyers, that we 100% review that specific cartoon.
There it is again. I got another inbox tick just went up. That's all right.
Yep.
We're fine.
No, we legally have to do these, so we're going to get them out of the way. We're in it to win it. For today.
Yeah.
For Ben.
This
What
is
a
for
maniac.
You, Ben.
Kissper and then the Littles, or Here Come the Littles. We need to actually
Let's
break this
clarify.
down.
Yeah,
exactly. So Ben has recommended that we watch the cartoon Here Come the Littles. Well, Here Come the Littles is actually a 1985 American, Luxembourgish, Canadian, Japanese, French animated fantasy project that was produced in France by Deke Enterprise. And that's a movie. It's an actual movie length. I think it's 75 minutes.
Right.
Feature called Here Come the Littles.
And that's what Ben said. That's what he said in his clip.
Right.
But Here Come the Littles and Here Comes the Problem. There was also an animated series that was part of this. I guess you can call it a franchise. So we were which is just called, it's absolutely a franchise.
The Littlesverse, of course.
Well, and everything was adapted from books by John Peterson, too, which had been around since the 60s. So this was originally an animated series from Deke, made for ABC. So we had both, and we were like, well, we don't want to disappoint Ben, so what are we going to do? So, Sean, what did we end up settling on tonight? We watched the entire series run of everything, right?
No, of course not. We're not going to do that. No. Why did you do that?
For Ben.
It's so much stuff.
Just for
Sorry,
Ben.
Ben. Not happening, Ben.
Oh, no.
What we ended up actually doing was we watched the feature, Here Come the Littles, and then we watched season 1, episode 1 of The Littles, which is an episode titled Beware of Hunter. If that doesn't sound like it's grammatically correct, again, we'll get into it when Dave explains about his PhD in vacuuming.
Yeah, and drywall.
Which is actually relevant to how that happened.
It is.
So we watched the movie, and we wanted to see the continuity in what happened when it translated and transitioned over into an actual ABC-produced still with Deke kind of behind the scenes, but as it moved into a television format in a series, we wanted to see exactly what this looked like.
And I think this one was actually, we usually get a movie and then transitions into an animated series. This one, I think, was the reverse, if we've got our years right. So Here Come the Littles, the feature, was 1985. The series ran from 83 to 85, so it was actually the series came first. But either way, we wanted to see how those two kind of adaptations kind of spoke to each other. And there's some oddities that we really can't account for in voice acting and direction and animation. It's weird. So it'll be an interesting talk.
Some of it just does not seem to make sense in terms of that timeline, and I'm okay with it.
That's fine too.
Yeah. Doesn't matter. It doesn't really.
It just doesn't matter, Ben.
Just doesn't matter. Just doesn't matter, Ben. Great suggestion, Ben. Doesn't matter at all. To help you understand and give a synopsis of The Littles, we're going to toss this over to a longtime listener and friend of the show, Bobby Anthem. He's going to give us a breakdown in terms of what we can expect for The Littles. So, Bobby, take it away.
The Littles is an animated series about a 13-year-old boy named Henry Big who goes on vacation and finds mouse-like creatures called Littles in his suitcase. There's a whole family of Littles. Frank and Henry Little raise their children, the excitable Tom and the helpful Lucy, with the assistance of Grandpa and Cousin Dinky. Together, the Littles and Henry get into all sorts of adventures, big and small.
Awesome. Thank you, Bobby. As always, Dave, how are we going to fit Bobby into the Littles verse as it is for him?
You know what's interesting?
Where is he gonna contribute?
Yeah, it's interesting. In the movie, the Littles, there's only one family of them. We get some parents, some kids, a cousin, and a grandpa. That's it. In the series, there's an entire civilization of them.
Right.
So I feel like, I don't know. I think Bobby in the Littles civilization could honestly be whatever he wants. He could be a rap god in the Littles. I don't think they had this in this very French and European and basically, honestly, very white civilization of Littles that they had. So I feel like if they rebooted this, yeah, 100%.
I'm just imagining this like all white town of the Littles, and just like something happens, and like they respond to a certain incident, and just somebody just screaming "World Star" in the background of it.
I would love it. It would
And
be like
Bobby
like a Trolls movie that just makes no sense. It's completely crazy, but I'm 100% here for it.
Yeah, you're there for it. Yeah, I like it. Cool. I think that's a perfect fit for Bobby in this show.
Syrian Bobby, when we reboot this,
Yeah.
you in.
When we restart the Littles verse, which is top
a
of the list
franchise.
for the both of us right now. Oh boy. So in order to kind of discuss and get into the Littles for this discussion, we're going to break this apart into 3 specific segments. We're going to talk the good, the bad, and not the ugly. Surprised you, the LOL. Not the spaghetti western. We're going to talk about things that were good about Here Come the Littles and the Littles.
So much content.
We're going to talk about some of the things that didn't resonate with us, some of the things that we didn't like. We didn't, they just they didn't work for us, and that's fine. And then finally, we're going to round this out with talking about the things that made us laugh, whether it was intentional or unintentional. We also just want to recognize that we know that a lot of time, effort, energy, and especially money, sweet, sweet cartoon bucks, went into making both this feature as well as also the series itself. So we're going to be critical, but at the same time, this show's like what? It's, 35 years old. So
It's like generational at this point. Yeah.
Pick and choose your battles, gang. Like if you're upset about this, like
We're going to hear from the Littles fan club and our lawyers after this show.
oh no, tick went up in inbox again. So here we go.
Here we go.
So let's get into the good. Let's talk about some of the things that we really did enjoy about this. So between the movie and the series, we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit to talk about this. We also might just kind of draw some comparisons in terms of what worked well between both of them.
Right.
So, Dave, just in terms of where we are right now, kind of talking about some of the good for the Littles, movie in the series, anything kind of like jumping out at you? Where do you want to begin? We got a lot to jump into.
Yeah, so like high level stuff for me is honestly the conceit and the story. So whether you're talking about the movie or the series, you basically have a story that should be familiar if you've read The Borrowers, if you've read The Littles, if you've watched Secret World of Arrietty, if you've any of those shows where there's sort of like the normal quote unquote human world, and then a parallel civilization of tiny miniaturized humanoid creatures that are living alongside of us. So whether they're elves or fairies or borrowers or brownies or whatever you want to call them, it's basically that kind of story. And I really like that because it's not only very imaginative, it's very fantastical and very creative. The sense of scope and scale with those size differences is something I've always loved in storytelling. So to actually get to see the world of the Littles and how they incorporate things from the human world to make their own stuff just on a very much smaller scale, I love that. Even things like David the Gnome, when we would go back and you would live in kind of like the larger world of the forest, but then you'd go down to their size and go inside the tree stump and see their house. Their house looked normal because everything was scaled to them, but if you were to compare it to the outside world, they'd be super tiny. So just one of my very specific peculiarities with like stories like this. I love scope and scale, and the Littles is definitely in that category.
No, I agree with you. I mean, you think about all the movies, the books, and media that we've had over the years that have kind of addressed this. Indian in the Cupboard.
Sure. Gulliver's Travels.
Yeah, Gulliver's Travels. Stuart Little.
Yeah.
Even Small Soldiers.
I was just thinking that. I was like, I don't know if he's going to say Small Soldiers, but it's in my head now. Yeah.
We're on the same wavelength.
Almost like we've been doing this for 6 years.
Yeah. So you think about all these things where you see that fun scale that David kind of mentioned, and like that gets really enjoyable because for me, it goes down to sort of that basic idea of just the secret.
Yeah.
Of like the secret that there is a thing that we as like regular people don't know exist. And that to me is super fascinating. To
Especially
know that there
as
is,
kids. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Know that there is, I mean, even as an adult,
Sure.
To know that there is like that completely separate world of like fun things that are going on that I have no idea about, and guess what? I don't want to get involved in them because I got enough on my plate. But it's cool to kind of think and see that imaginative interpretation of exactly how they execute on this.
Yeah.
I mean, these are very close to being just like tiny, tiny little small humans.
Just with tails. Yeah. I was kind of interested in the way that they approach this too, because you can set up that story in a number of ways. Like Sean was talking about The Secret. The little people civilization can kind of keep themselves secret from the quote-unquote bigs, as they call them, or the humans. Like fairies and elves, they tend to historically keep themselves separate from the human world, separate from even knowledge or awareness that they exist. This show plays with that idea in a number of ways, but they also kind of like open that door and in Sean's terms, kind of like share that secret with the kid and pretty much nobody else. So it's like Henry Big is the connection for the kids watching this show, and then he's also the one who discovers the littles and gets to kind of be friends with them along the way. Yeah.
It's so confusing because there's a part where all the littles refer to actual people our size as bigs.
Right.
But then Henry's name is literally big, B-I-G-G.
Yeah.
As a character, and his parents as well. And so they continue to call everybody bigs, but then there is an actual big.
But then there's another point later on where when we meet the family, they call themselves the Littles. But then later we meet an entire like civilization, and we don't know if they're all the Littles or if that's a family name. And then we also meet a doctor later on who's like, I've discovered a race of diminutive elf-like beings which I call the Littles. I'm like, wait a minute, do you know like the family? Did you get like their mail intercepted somehow? Or like how do you know their name or what their species is called? But anyway. Yeah, for a later discussion.
But it's weird because we get a cousin that's introduced named Dinky.
Right.
And we never really know if his last name is Little as well. Like they don't.
I mean, it is according to everything I've read, but
yeah, he's just kind of like grouped in with the rest of them.
Right.
And
that's probably pulled over from the books too. Unfortunately, Ben did not get to read the entire book franchise. Just didn't have the time. But
yeah,
maybe in the future.
Because none of them made it out alive.
What?
Did I ruin the book?
You ruined books.
I ruined books.
You ruined books.
Going back kind of, to think about sort of, what we have in terms of the scale of everything, I loved all of sort of, as you mentioned, Dave, sort of like, the objects that they are using like in their home.
Yeah.
That's on their side, like that's their size.
Because they're using like pieces of our stuff for their material. Yeah.
Right. Whether it's like a birthday candle or like a match is like a torch.
Yeah.
I loved all of the more complex.
Yes.
Components that they had that sort of made up their modes of transportation that they had inside of all of our houses, whether it was like sort of like a tin can that was kind of like on rails that had a string attached to it that they could kind of like lower themselves down like very quickly. There were so many different fun things that took those common household items and used them in a new imaginative and inventive way. It was really kind of cool, and every time they used it I was like, okay, what do we got now? And a majority of the time, that machine or however that mode of transportation was working, I was like, somebody's really going to get hurt.
Did not have safety concerns built into these things.
There were no safety concerns. Every time I looked at one, there was a moment where we have Grandpa trying to kind of hold an apple with his tail, and I was like, rest in peace, Grandpa. Rest
stem.
in peace.
Yeah,
like
in peace.
He's trying to, like, his tail wrapped around the stem of an apple, and I was like, yo, rest in peace, Grandpa. Like this guy.
Or apple.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, they're just gonna eat Grandpa and forget about the apple. Like, this is what it's like to be a little now.
That pulls from one of my LOLs, but I do like when the stem inevitably broke loose, and he's like, they don't make apples like they used to. It's like, okay, Grandpa, you just ignoring reality, but that's fine. We'll move on from that. But yeah, I love that. Sean mentioned at the beginning of the show, it wasn't just a bit. I mean, it was, but he talked about the Rube Goldberg machines because that's what they had in like the walls of your house. Go take a crowbar, sledgehammer, check the walls of your house. You're probably going to find an intricate array of transport conveyances, little chairs made out of pencil stubs. You're going to find all kinds of crazy stuff. And that's courtesy of the Littles.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I like to think every time I go mini golfing, I just come home with a couple extra pencils and I just throw them on the floor. And I
open up a vent and I just toss them in.
Oh, yeah, there you go. I just assume that the Littles are just always making their own IKEA furniture out of my crap.
Yeah, it would be great, actually, if you could just leave trash around your house and these, like, Littles would just come and clean it up and then repurpose it into their own stuff. Because that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're essentially taking our trash. I like that they put, like, there was a postage stamp in the Littles family, like, kitchen. And they have it as sort of like a painting on the wall. So it's super cute because it lets you know, like, the scale of it, but it's also, like, fun that they're repurposing our trash, essentially. It's kind of neat.
It's very Captain Planet of them. We're trying to reduce, reuse, recycle everything that we have that's available.
The carbon footprint of the entire civilization of Littles, like, does not even amount to, like, one human, I don't think. But
Well, it's hard because they're just buying carbon credits. Like they're still polluting significantly. They're just offsetting.
They are. They participate in
it.
a carbon economy, which is, still very progressive of them because we don't even do that.
It's very weird when you look in season 3 when you get down into the coal mine of all the littles and you're just like, oof, the business practices that they have in place here are not good.
They are brutal.
Yes.
Remember we were talking about safety concerns? They are not addressed in the mines.
Not even there.
My God. See, you should have watched the entire series. We're telling you.
This is what happens.
This is the thing that happens in our reboot and nowhere else. I will say, though, that another thing I liked was the story, at least in the movie, because the series just kind of picks up and runs with the conceit that we talked about. There's not really a great connection to the movie, as far as I know. But I like the insanity of the movie's plot because it starts with an introduction to Henry, and this is kind of an LOL, and you learn immediately that his parents are archaeologists whose plane went down in Africa and they're lost. So
Oh my God.
Henry was in the care of the housekeeper for a little bit, but then they're like, well, can't do that forever, so we're going to ship you off to your insane, awful uncle Augustus because he's now your caregiver. Sorry. That was insane, but I was like, okay, they're going for it. That's at least an interesting, weird orphan origin story for Henry.
Just to set the scene.
Yeah.
You come in on Here Come the Littles, and it kind of gives you a title screen. You get a pan down into this house. You're introduced to Henry. Guy's alone in his room. He's just sobbing.
Super upset. What a great way to start a kid's movie.
That's how this entire thing begins.
Right.
That's, and it's again, it's very weird just in terms of, understanding the timeline, because I actually did see a connection between what had happened in the movie versus the actual television show.
Okay.
Because, surprise, surprise, at some point, the Littles reveal themselves to Henry.
Right.
This
was in the movie. Yeah.
Right. In the movie, at a very critical time where they need his assistance in terms of being able to save somebody.
Which I guess clarifies our timeline. It would have made sense for that to already take place in the series, unless this was a prequel that came after the fact. I don't know. It didn't clarify the timeline. I lied directly to you. Sorry.
Yeah. No. It doesn't make sense because then in the actual series, then you have this moment where everybody's debating. You have this
a town hall or a town council meeting.
Exactly.
I was where did all these littles come from?
You have this gathering, and they have some type of a hierarchy in terms of how they're doing this. And
elected officials, yeah.
There's a debate saying that Lucy told Henry, and she has to pay the consequences for it. And he talks about their charter and that she broke it. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
They're one ironclad or aluminum clad, I guess, if you're littles. That's their one rule. Don't reveal the existence of our kind to the big people because it's going to be a disaster. So it was interesting that was a part of this this series, first episode.
And I like that. I like the fact that there seemed to be consequence. But looking at the timeline, you're like, there's no way any of this makes sense.
No.
It does not make sense at all in any way, shape, or form. The only thing that I can think is that this show was made back in the early 80s, and then they released the actual cartoon series, and it ended up from the series. They were like, oh, well, we do have that feature that we could just release. Why don't we just do that? I guess. Possible. Why not?
Or they just wanted to explain a weird, a weird origin without really being an origin. But I don't think they also explain how, we know that the Littles, the family, capital L Littles, lives in the Biggs, the Biggs house. The Littles family lives in the Biggs house. And they live in the dark places, under the floorboards, between the walls, places you can't really see them. That's cool. Where does the rest of this civilization live? Is there an underground network that they can get from one place to another? They kind of show it a little bit with some of these conveyances and transportation shuttles and systems that they have. But is there just a vast underground network connecting all the Littles throughout the society or the town? I don't know. I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, it seems very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And there seems to be a lot of stuff to mine in terms of the idea of
Literally,
what they have
coal.
there. Yeah, like coal.
Yeah.
And so season 3. And so it's crazy to think that they have all these things here. But what's even crazier is that they start this feature with just a boy crying in his room.
Yeah.
And we have 2 of the Littles that are just kind of creeping on him, and they're just like, yo, his parents are dead.
Man, his parents, man, they ain't coming back.
Yikes.
Ugh, they're lost in Africa. They're not coming back. These Littles are the most informed creatures in the entire show or movie.
Yes, 100%.
For better or worse.
See, These little eavesdroppers
Yeah.
know everything and are way too invested in all of the nuance and minutia of like
It's like they're watching soap
life.
operas.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's so crazy to think that they're just like, yo, we saw Henry the other day, like he was doing it. Like it just felt like Henry is like their topic of gossip around the table, like the dinner table
24/7.
all the time. Yeah, like they're just like, oh, we gotta turn on the bigs, gotta creep on these people.
Yeah. I mean, what else are you going to do?
But I mean, just kudos to them for just creating a thing with like archaeologists' parents where they're on a plane that gets damaged in Africa, and that sets the tone for
Yes.
the show.
Yeah.
And
Like-
if you're like, hey Sean, does this happen in like the first 5 or 10 minutes? I'm like, no, this happens in the first 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Where
And
you
then
get
the
this-
littles, like, they elaborate on it. Because
Yeah.
they're like, okay, first we learn that Henry's parents, like, disappeared in Africa. And you're like, well, that's weird. But then we learn from the littles that, like, they're archaeologists. They were on a
Yep.
plane trip. Their plane went down. They haven't been heard from since. Are you on, like, an RSS feed with, like, all the local and latest, like, alerts for the little or the big family?
There were 2 seconds where I was like, yo, this was an inside job by a little. Like one of them like pulled
set the whole
something
thing up.
on the plane.
To be
like they were
fair,
just trying to get rid of him.
They do engage in some very subtle domestic terrorism in both the movie and the series. So I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happened at some point.
Yeah.
They really do mess up. They're like little gremlins sometimes.
Yeah.
They mess with the machinery. They set fires. They steal stuff. They kind of destroy some stuff.
Terrorize animals?
Yeah, they do to an extent.
Dave, they strap a paintbrush to a cat's head.
Cat liked it.
No, I don't.
The cat didn't like the altercation with the dog.
Okay.
Famously.
I'm confused that you said that cats enjoy having paintbrushes like strapped to their heads.
They didn't mind.
Yeah. I'm going to go on record. Oh, you know what? Our lawyers are sending us a message right now.
That one was specifically to me.
Yeah, just the subject says shut it down.
Shut it all down. I will say, one of the other things I liked in this story, there's not a whole lot of allegory. There's not really any story beyond what we've already set up. It's essentially like Henry goes to live with this crappy Scrooge-like uncle who is really just the worst. Like, there's no redeeming qualities to this guy at all, even by the movie's end.
I loved him. Loved every minute of him.
I liked him. I've got some in the bad section, too, that they,
Okay.
he's a very just one-note character, and that was it.
Sure.
And that's it. So Henry and the Littles kind of travel there together. They get themselves out of a jam over the course of this, like, hour and 15 minutes. And that's pretty much it. There's not really a whole lot of resolution to it. But I completely lost my little train of thought. I don't know where I was going with any of that.
Oh, little train of thought. They just crawled into your ear, poked on your brain, forgot what you were going to say.
Gremlins and cats. So what I liked was that they made the cat, instead of an enemy, which, like, everything eats littles. Rats, cats, dogs, humans, if they find them, I guess, would eat them, like a little ortolan. But they don't look up ortolan. But I like that they actually made friends with the cat. It was sort of like the fable with the lion with a thorn in its paw, wherever that came from originally. They have this in Littles. And I was like, that's cute. I like that they have, like, animal friends, that they don't just get eaten by everything. It's like David the Gnome and Swift the Fox. Like, I love those animal pairings. There's a really weird one in the series with Slick the Turtle, who is 100% my spirit animal. Because it's just this dopey turtle. They strap roller skates to him. He's just kind of along for the ride, man. I love him so much.
He's pretty great.
He's great.
He's really enjoyable.
He's not really there for any reason other than to just be super cute.
But can you give me an impression of like every time he opens his mouth?
What is he? He's just kind of... No?
Yeah.
That's it.
He just whole time. That's it.
Just very curious and inquisitive about everything and very confused by everything that's going on.
That turtle looks stoned to the bone and
Yeah.
just happy to be there and is having a good time.
I just like that they found roller skates tiny enough to put on an already tiny turtle's feet.
Oh my god.
So cute.
It's ridiculous. I will say something good for me.
Yeah.
I loved the motto that they gave the Littles.
And what was that?
Littles don't take stuff without giving something back in return.
Right. So they're little
know.
barterers.
Yeah, they're a little like, they at least have morals. Like there's, just in terms of like what they do.
They live in a society. They
Right.
don't hoard toilet paper.
Yeah. Oof. And like, and to that response, I was like, they don't take stuff without giving something back in return. And I'm just
Right.
like, maybe give Henry back his parents because
Maybe do
we
that.
know it was an inside job, gang.
Yeah,
Like,
maybe at least one.
yeah, just one parent.
If you're going
Like,
to take one, just give one
yeah,
back.
you pick.
Either one.
Like, yeah,
It's fine.
Make this a a Saw situation with the littles.
Yikes.
Just like
Season 4.
It's season 4.
You would have to make the tiniest torture devices to run these littles through. They'd be so small, and they would still be cute, but horrendous at the same time.
It would just be whatever, like the do you want to play a game? But just like it would have to be so much higher in pitch that it would just be uncomfortable for everybody.
And then when it takes that jigsaw mask off at the end, it's actually Slick the Turtle the whole time. Sorry for spoilers, but
yeah,
never saw it coming.
Yeah,
That would be so cute. God. Speaking of so cute, one of my maybe last good things before we jump into the next section, I liked, in quotes, the animation of the movie.
Yes.
But it wasn't great. Like
I agree.
Yeah.
Can we want to segue that into the bad now?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I know where you're going with this, and I agree.
I will say that what I liked about it was in the movie at least, they used light and darkness and shadow and transitioning into scenes like if they were out in an open floor and then they had to go into the wall. It was pretty fluid. As far as like the lighting, that was actually really well done, surprisingly well done, to the point that I noticed it. You usually don't notice stuff like that in cartoons unless they really do a good job or they do a terrible job. The animation itself, not great. Comparable to other stuff in like the early and mid 80s, not quite up to par. Go ahead.
But there is a decent amount of action that's in here.
There's a lot, almost too much.
It's well directed and it's well put together in terms of like its composition.
Editing and everything's fine, yeah.
And it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's fun to watch. But I think the direction that you and I are both going in is that when you move over to the regular series, it's like they were like, hey, what if we did Littles on a budget?
And you do see the differences in the budget between the series and the movie itself. And I'll be honest, like even the script I don't think really helped a lot in those cases. Because there are ways to, like, if you're working on a small budget, you can actually kind of pause and take a breath a little bit here and there and have just character development and have a conversation between more or less still characters. You don't have to have them running all over the place. I think the thing that both the movie and the series suffered from is they felt they had to constantly be in motion without taking a chance to like sit down and like get to know a character, reestablish or refocus on whatever our relationship was supposed to be. Like I liked Lucy and Tom as siblings, but I didn't get much of a sense of their relationship beyond the little one-liners that they had, the occasional like over sharing of scenes of public affection that they had. Like, I don't know, they could have taken a breath every once in a while and done some slower stuff. Go ahead.
And they didn't, and that brings me to something that I didn't love about the movie, as well as also the series. Everything's an emergency.
It is.
Everything is a crisis.
Yes.
In terms of what they're doing, and I want to be very clear when I say I want to say that these are all preventable emergencies, and these are all preventable crises,
or they can at least be
have
like
mitigated,
planned for.
Sure.
Like even if we know it's happening, or like we got some time, we can sort this out. Let's get a plan together, put our heads together, and come up with something. Or you can just run, pell-mell into the fire or whatever.
Oh my god! And I felt like that's what they did. I felt like
sometimes.
For the 75-minute feature, Here Come the Littles, it was just a head down. Let's put them in the most disastrous situations where everybody almost dies at least twice, I think.
It was constant, honestly.
Yeah.
It was every sequence just led into the next sequence of like something was worse. So like if they got trapped in a suitcase, then they almost got discovered. And then they got almost discovered, but then they almost get eaten by a rat. And then when they escape the rat, they almost get eaten by a cat. And then it just escalation, which is normally great and fun, and you need that over the long haul. But if you don't take time to like stop and catch your breath, it becomes monotonous and tiring and honestly weirdly boring. If they're just constantly like on the run, I'm just like, okay. I don't know. I'm just watching you run around. I don't really care at this point. Like it took a while, but at one point I was just like, I don't care.
Can I pitch something or an idea? Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Well, we've already got them in the coal mines. We've already run them through a tiny saw system. So what else you got?
Right. No. So I because everything could have been preventable, and it's and everything in this feature in the show is a crisis for them. Where they have to assemble a town hall and look at their charter and crap.
Right.
You recognize that their entire society is based off of the idea that they are stealing little chunks of everything from us.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
I think we're all on the same page. I think we can.
That's how they subsist. Yeah.
Like that's the situation. And the complication is the fact that they have to continue to kind of like steal these things, and that every time they do that, they potentially put themselves in harm's way.
Right.
And
They're like hunter-gatherers.
yeah, and like, but the implication of all of this is that some of them at some point may not have made it out alive. Like that's a fact. Like, I don't think that, yeah, I know it's a kid's show and it's based off of a book and there are all these things out there, but like, there's a moment where like we're talking about all of this where I honestly think I would have been way more interested in the idea that like something happened and they're like, oh, Lucy didn't make it out. And they're like,
Yikes.
what? And then they have to deal with what had happened. Like there was a moment where I was like, I know it's a dark story. I know it's tragedy that we're putting in here, but at the same time, you can't put somebody in harm's way 15 times in a feature. And after the second or third time, I'm just like, do it, drown him in that honey. I dare you, make it happen.
That's true. That almost happens.
Like,
yeah.
just, Tom, like it just, for something to allow them to kind of take that moment to kind of process or figure things out, or just be like, we really got to get our stuff together because we were just killing siblings in this show.
I'm now theorizing that there exists, because I have a town council, that there exists some kind of like black ops squad among the littles whose job it is to either like rescue a captured little who gets identified while they're out and about, or just executes them and like wipes them off the board like they never happened.
Oh my God.
Like, season 5.
I wonder if John Peterson's books ever got dark. Because, I mean, like, you have to think that, like, people get
Once
old.
he had that PTSD kick in, it got real dark.
Yeah. I mean, but you have to think, like, Grandpa's old.
Yeah.
Grandpa's.
I would love a Grandpa prequel with some of the stuff that he said. He had, like, pioneer days, quote unquote.
Where's the Grandpa prequel?
He was fighting badgers, he was fighting voles and squirrels and all kinds of other stuff that he mentioned. Yeah.
God, yeah.
I'd watch that.
Speaking of Grandpa
was Black Ops. He can't talk about it anymore.
Basically a ranger.
He was. It's just
for the little army.
Or like a button man for the little mafia. I don't know which.
Right. I will say we had the same voice actor for the grandfather in both. I will say I loved him in the feature.
He was great.
What didn't work for me was some of the voice direction in the series itself.
A little off. Yeah.
I want to say a little lackluster, just in terms of you could tell people in the feature were just like, yeah, this is a thing that might not make sense in terms of the little timeline. Sure. Don't worry about it. But like,
he was also like in the feature, he was really kind of like the heroic force.
Right.
He was basically the one that was like going to rescue the kids, and he had to call upon the help of like some cousins and some other stuff. But he was the one that was kind of like experienced and the aggressive kind of player and organized everybody around to like get stuff done.
Right.
In the series, it's more about the kids. The focus shifts to the kids and to Henry, so he doesn't really have as much to do. So I feel like he kind of just like kicks back a little bit.
It's a bummer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw this out there. The theme song. I hated the animation in the theme song.
That's interesting.
The music. I remember because I used to watch the Littles on TV.
You're okay with the music.
Yeah, I was okay with the music. I had that nostalgic anchor, so I was okay with that. In fact, I started kind of humming along with it a little bit. It's not the greatest song ever, but for me, like
it'd be weird
enjoyed,
if it was, don't you think?
Yeah, it's like it's a real banger, and so you put a beat behind that, and like you'll never stop bopping your head to it. It's great. But man, the animation in the first couple seconds, which was this like belabored view of Henry trying to turn his face. There was a moment where I was like, is he an android? I'm going to throw up. I was like, this is so bad.
There were moments in the series where they tried to show him like just turning like a corner, and like one arm would be about 8 feet long and the other one would just be like a stump, and you're just like, what are you doing? Like, is he turbo tuning right now? What is happening? Is he trying to turn into a little? It's funny that we had opposite opinions of the intro though, because I actually liked the camera direction of the intro sequence, because they played with trying to like change perspective and trying to go from like the big world down to the little world in like a oneer. Like they tried to actually do that in animation, which is tough enough in live action.
I don't know, dude. You might be more of a maniac than Ben going in that direction.
I thought it was interesting, at least. It wasn't the same old thing. It wasn't the clip show. It wasn't, recycled animation. It wasn't something that was like obviously put together with more of a budget than the actual show itself so that it looked different. It wasn't like an anime style to begin with. So I at least appreciated that they tried to like get the sense of scale and like shifting scope and scale in the interesting. I hated the song. Absolutely hated that song.
It's really,
It doesn't stick in my head
Wow.
because I have like an immune response
Here
built
come
up
the
to it.
little-
Nope, it won't stay. Right now, neutrophils are attacking the song molecules and driving it out of my system. I'm sweating that song out as I speak.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I hope that's what it is.
Because Dave, here come the little.
It doesn't stick.
It doesn't?
No.
You sure? I got it.
I'm
It's
sweating more.
It's an earworm that is just banging around
No,
in the old dome
that
right
doesn't
now.
stick
I love
in my
it.
head. I'll let you know in about 8 hours if it's still there.
I'm gonna text you throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah, and night.
and just painfully, just like word by word, here come the littles. So it sounds
Time
like
for
a
a new
threat.
phone, I guess.
Yeah, right. Just get this burner.
Can I say something else that really bugged me about specifically the movie
Oh, please.
that we have a difference of opinion on? You really liked Augustus.
Oh, yeah.
He was too mustache twirly for me because there's nothing interesting about him. We get this Scrooge-like caretaker in a dilapidated house. Everything is dark. He pretends to be kind of like an okay guy when the housekeeper's there and drops Henry off, and then he's like completely wretched the entire time. It's like a Cinderella thing where he just abuses this kid, turns him into his slave basically, berates him at every turn, and then is like, by the way, I don't only own you and this house, which is garbage. I own your parents' house, and I'm going to bulldoze it, and I'm going to put up a shopping center. Like
That was the best excuse. And when you realize that his house is in like a development,
Yeah.
in sort of like a suburban cul-de-sac
like a
style
cul-de-sac.
development, he was just like, "I'm going to demolish your house and build a strip mall." Like
why?
Where and how and
you got to
what are
get
the
like
permits?
rezoning permits.
Yeah. Our lawyers just messaged us. They said it's possible.
They did say it's possible, but it's going to cost some
Yeah.
little
Some
bucks.
some real cartoon coins.
Some real cartoon currency. But it's just like how much we've already got disappeared parents from a plane in Africa. May or may not have been caused by the littles. We don't know. But then we've also got this guy. It turns out he's been like practicing forging his nephew, or I guess
Dave, at one point, he's just like, he opens his breast pocket of his jacket, pulls out a letter.
Yeah.
Who has a
He's got it
letter?
ready to
He's
go.
got a handwritten
like
letter. He goes,
laminated.
This gives me the ability to be able to do whatever I want to you. And I'm like, you know what? Nobody's going to disprove this.
And you couldn't see it, but Sean was literally twirling his mustache as he did it.
Yep.
But then we learn, thanks to the one character we haven't really mentioned because I hate him, Dinky, the one saving grace he does in the show, in the movie even, is that he discovers that Augustus has been practicing his brother's handwriting so that he could make this like forged document. It's a long stretch to go to get to like this level of villainy for something that ultimately doesn't amount to anything.
But like
It's nuts.
it went to crazy town
Yes.
in like a fire bus immediately,
Yes.
and had like Bengal tigers jumping off of how crazy it was. I was so on board with just the weird level of insanity for this base reality. They were like, well, parents stuck in Africa. He's basically an orphan.
basically
now.
an orphan,
You know, he's gonna have his house in like the suburbs bulldozed into a shopping
Yes.
center.
Yeah.
And his
Insult to injury.
yeah, and his uncle has been freaking forging letters. I'm like, this feels like every 5-year-old's nightmare.
Yeah.
Just like
The only good thing is that
watching
you've
this.
discovered like a little civilization that can be your friends and also set everything else on fire.
It was so bonkers to be able to put all of this together. I was like, oh, the littles are like the least crazy thing that
Yes.
are happening in this world.
It was on the same par as like a Lemony Snicket, but at least in
Yeah.
Lemony Snicket, like that villain is supposed to be like the height of villainy, and I'm sure it was in this cartoon too. It was just kind of like, even at the end, he's pretty much just like he shows up at the house. Henry has gone to the cops to just be like, my crazy uncle is like abusing me, and he's forging these letters, so please come arrest him. And I'm gonna save it for the LOL. But even at the end, nothing really happens to him, and everything kind of goes back to normal. There's no like redemptive arc for him. We don't learn why he's ticked off at the rest of his family, why he's doing what he's doing. There's nothing else to it except that he's an evil old dude. That's it.
Yeah, I just assumed that, in the actual series, at some point, the Littles had been like Saw-style torturing him for years. And
Well,
he was
we
just like,
do learn
"Here we
that
go."
Grandpa used to live there.
Yeah.
So Grandpa had like a whole room in that house set up, and he has his old books
Right.
there, and that's like the cozy place that the younger Littles, Tom and Lucy, kind of find like refuge when they're trapped there. But it's
little
like
matchbox bed and stuff. That he
yeah,
has
like give me
that's-
that
yeah.
story though. Like I want to know more about Grandpa's backstory.
Again,
Do
yeah.
a prequel with him growing up. Like I'd watch that.
I have two more things that I was not super jazzed about.
Well, before we get off of Augustus, how did you feel
Okay.
about Dr. Hunter?
Oh, that was
The
one of my
other
things I wanted to
antagonist.
talk
Okay,
about.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, he's the worst. He was such a trash villain in terms of what's there. And if you're just like, Sean, you've been kind of ragging on some of these people a little bit. He's walking around with a device that measures subnormal heartbeats.
Not even just walking, like they're driving around in like
Yeah.
a trailer just across the country, just him and another dude, McPherson.
And his scheme is that like he's taken some photos that like kind of show like a tail and like some
Like
footprints,
little footprints
of
Yeah.
like of a small society that he wants to capture. Now, I guess here's the thing I don't like.
Yeah.
This sounds like a great scientific discovery. Okay, like to find something like this, like that would be rather interesting. I think that we'd all be like, wow, I want to know more about that
Sure.
in the world.
Right.
He is coming at it from a perspective of, I'm going to get these things and then I'm going to murder them. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, I'm
Like,
basically
there
going to
was
like
no- yeah,
experiment him to death.
There was no reason for him to be malicious in his direction. They were just like, and again, you know, we talked about the fact that like, you know, this episode is called Beware of Hunter, which grammatically is trash.
It's to like
And then-
disguise it as like not the Hunter. His
Yeah.
name is Hunter. Like nobody
His
cares.
name is Dr. Hunter.
Nobody,
and,
even Ben doesn't care.
and he's got a vacuum, and we're all just like, knock it
I
off.
cannot wait to get to the LOLs because the vacuum
Stop
takes
it.
up 60% of them. The only thing that I was like kind of okay with was sort of that Harry and the Hendersons plot. Like if he would have been a hunter or a collector even, instead of like a weird mad scientist, if he would have been a collector of like rarities and like rare species, or was like a trophy hunter, something like that.
Sure.
Fine.
Like a craven, but for little people.
Right. For little people, season 6.
Yep.
So, like that, if he was a collector, that would have been fine. The experiment, it made no sense. Because normally, like a scientist, now I know this is like 80s mad science cartoon logic, but like a scientist would be like, cool, let's study this civilization and let's learn more about them, like Henry does. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know who's worse, Augustus
Yeah.
or Hunter. Neither of them really makes sense.
I know. I think Hunter is the worst, and
Okay.
and the reason is because it leads into my final bad point I
Okay.
have about this. If Dave, if you thought the animation in the feature was not that great, have I introduced you to how bad this trash is in the actual series?
It's
Because
pretty,
it is
pretty bad.
There is a moment where, as we mentioned, Dr. Hunter knocks on the door, and it's your first introduction to the parents.
Yeah.
And it's
Especially
as
for
if-
us, having thought that they were like dead
Yeah.
on the Nile somewhere. Like we were
So
like,
shame
these
on you,
guys are
Ben,
dead.
for leading us in the wrong direction in terms of the chronology of how this is supposed to go.
Unless
So-
this is like a Hey Arnold situation where they really were lost in a jungle. I don't know.
Oh yeah, well that's legit and checks out. Okay, nobody's talking ill about Hey Arnold on this
Never.
show ever. So we get this moment where like Dr. Hunter is knocking on the door because he found some subnormal heartbeat BS that I don't care about anymore.
Right.
So he's walking around with like a dirt devil or like trying to like suck stuff up.
He's like a door-to-door vacuum salesman at this
Right.
point, but he's not even like slick enough to even use that ploy. He's like, no, I'm a scientist with a vacuum. Okay, come on in.
Yeah, but he knocks on the door. Parents open, and they just like they are wide-eyed, staring at him, not blinking, and they're just like, "Oh, who are you?" And he explains, and they still have their eyes open, not blinking. And I was like, I'm so uncomfortable. And then in the last half a second before it cuts, the dad blinks, and I was like, that mom is still dead inside.
Yep.
What the heck is
She's
going
being
on?
puppeted by littles on the
Just
inside.
marionetted.
She's
She's
just-
weekended Bernied with littles
right.
on the inside
Littles
of her
on
body.
the inside. We
And
said they were
I-
good at machines and stuff.
I almost threw up. I was so
It's
grossed
almost
out.
as bad as the wonky asymmetric blinks in Monster by Mistake, which is still one of my favorite Canadian productions ever. We stopped and watched that thing so many times, like just eyes googling in different directions. My only two other gripes, one is technical, one from an audio standpoint. Henry sounds crystal clear, like perfect. Like everything he delivers is great. When it comes to the littles, they all sound like they're inside of like a tin can, and I don't know why. It was just odd enough that it was different sound. I don't know if they did something in post-production or if they wanted to get a particular like smaller sound from the. I have no idea, but it was weird.
And I don't know if some of this, like, I will say, a good thing that I didn't mention is that the version of the movie that we found that's on YouTube, if you search for it, that came up, has like some real like tracking
Yeah.
stuff that
From VHS.
whoever, from a VHS tape when anybody uploaded this, and man, is it all over the place for the first couple seconds. Like there are problems with the sound throughout, and so I don't know if it was just a bad rip, but there are definitely moments where there's like sound effects, like the rat screeching,
Oh, the
which
sound
sounded
effects
like
are
a
god-awful.
space laser.
Throughout, yeah.
Oh my god, like some of them were just bad, and I don't know if those were the rip or if that was the actual stuff from the show.
I think it was the stuff from the show because it's just bad canned Foley. Like if you've watched decades of cartoons, you're like, yeah, I recognize that. That's okay. That's fine. You paid 36 cents for that, so cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was that. My audio issues came more with the series actually, which had a pretty good rips. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just noticeable. No big deal. Just something weird. The other thing that I thought was interesting, a PSA at the end of the first episode. Kind of a PSA. So it's weird because we liked their Rube Goldberg machines. We like seeing how the Littles repurpose our stuff into making their stuff. So they made a telegraph machine from like thumbtacks and a paperclip or whatever. They made a printing press from essentially like an eraser and then a ballpoint pen and some ink that they could use as a printing press. I'm like, that's super cool. And then they have a weird PSA showing how the Littles made it. And part of me is like, that's cool. I like that they went the extra mile and showed like the ingenuity that they had. But then much like Henry, who was just kind of like, cool. At the end, he was like, I don't know what to do with this information, so I guess the show's over.
Yeah, help me.
And that's
Thanks
how
for
I
making
felt.
this small stamp that I don't need.
Thanks for ruining an eraser, I guess.
Oh God. Yeah.
So it was just funny and weird. That is probably more of an LOL. So why don't we get into it?
Let's get into LOLs
Oh,
because I think
boy.
I've actually talked about almost all of my LOLs except for one small after dark subsection that I can get into later.
Interesting.
Yep.
I will say before we get into After Dark stuff, I really like the grandpa. He had some really good one-liners.
Oh yeah.
A lot of them revolving around apples. I want to know more about his pioneer days. He reminds me of what's his name from Gargoyles, Hudson.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
He reminds me. He's just like the kindly old grandfather, but he can whip you at the same time. Like he's capable. He's not just there for morality plays or lessons or whatever. Like he can get out there and he can get into the fight.
Right.
Just a lot of one-liners were kind of funny. There's a moment where Lucy and Tom are in these little like sacks, and Lucy says, this is fun, like a potato sack race. And then Tom says, if Augustus finds us, we'll be mashed potatoes. And I just thought that was like super violent for kids. Like the visual of this old man just squashing these mice flat with his shoe.
But again, they constantly live in crisis. This is like they
Constant
should be
fear.
They should have been mashed potatoes.
They should have
Like,
been
one of
multiple
them.
times, or drowned
One
in
of them.
honey, or eaten by a cat or a rat, or trapped in a mousetrap. Like there's so many times. Set afire, like so many times.
A lawnmower.
A lawnmower? Yeah, anything.
Plane-
The plane
plane
that
crash.
crashed. Yep, falling from the sky. That whole sequence with Dinky was completely unnecessary, but here we are. I did like one thing about Augustus, not just him pulling that paper from his pocket whenever he wanted to shove it in Henry's face. This is a man who's set up that he lives alone. He does not really take care of his house. That's kind of why he wants Henry there as like a slave/housekeeper. He detests housekeepers. That's why the nanny could not live with Henry in the house. She could not come with him because Augustus was like, nope. So Augustus has nobody else living there. He goes through the trouble of making this dinner. Now, it's not much. It's basically just soup. But it's got silver bowls and platters and silverware and trays all set up for Henry. When Henry doesn't take like a sip of soup, he just destroys the whole thing. His own food included. He just takes a cane to the entire table and just wipes it out. Like Bill Murray in Ghostbusters, like just takes everything but the flowers out. And I just thought it was so funny that he went through all this trouble to make food for a person he hates and then just destroys everything in front of him. It was about as super villainous as he would get.
Even that line where he just goes, "Finish your soup."
Yeah. Everything's just so much.
So funny.
So over the top. God. Is there anything else that made you laugh?
I mean, all of the After Dark stuff from the series itself made me crack up.
Was it mostly Tom and Lucy's weird chemistry?
Oh no.
You didn't pick up on that?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, okay.
Picked up on their weird
Incestuous,
like
a little-
quasi-incestuous.
yeah.
That's not what made me laugh really hard. We'll take it in 3 beats.
Sure.
First is that the episode after like this wonk animation intro and this unforgettably delightful theme song plays, and then it's just again it's like it's Henry in his room by himself, and then he just walks over to the door and he just takes a key out, like a key, and just locks it. And I was like, what is about to happen now? Like, this just got
Henry's growing
real.
up.
I don't know what it is about just like that type of like privacy.
Henry just got the internet.
I'm just like, oh, this got weirdly horny. Like, why did this get weirdly? Like, this is a me thing. If you're listening and you're just like, it's a Keyshawn, get over it. Like, just chill. I recognize, whatever. I'm fine, with this. But like, he then goes and like he sets up this like an Atari joystick.
Yeah.
And then in order to like operate the Atari joystick, you've got Tom Little like humping the side of it, just like going to town.
That's how I do it.
And Henry and Tom's exchange, he goes, I've never done one of these. He goes, now it's your chance. And I was like, what are these two doing?
Remember
like,
that the door is locked this entire time.
Yeah, the door is locked. Like, this is going on. And I'm just like,
Mom, don't come in. I'm playing with my little furry friends.
Yeah, nope. It's just, I definitely, I paused for a second and I was like, okay, this feels weird. And it's not just like the delivery of the voice, the animation again, just because of like how kind of jank and like wonky it is. Like the motion of Tom like moving the joystick is just, it really just looks like he's like punishing the side of this thing,
who
just
knows?
like going to town.
And I have to say too, part of that, like it all starts with this intro. One of the funniest things, if you don't watch anything else, watch this intro again. I know we're an hour into this or so, and you know more about it than you ever wanted to, unless you're Ben. But if you know nothing about this show, and your first introduction to anything is a wonky-eyed Henry, kind of like wall-eyed staring at the camera and just going, I have a secret. I'm the only one who can see a family of little people who live inside the walls. Like, it is insane. He comes across like a completely crazy person, and it's so delightful because it's done with like such pure intent. Like, it's a kid's show. It's like, I have a secret. I can see a family of little people that live inside the wall. But without that context, he should be committed.
Yeah,
like it's off the rocker.
I mean, call up Arkham. Let's get this kid committed. The third piece of this is at the very end of the episode, Dave. Very end of the episode. Like Henry has been able to save to save Tom and Lucy, and they are back, in like whatever this town hall meeting is.
Right.
And now Henry can't get inside. He's like looking through like a grate in the side of like a building.
Yeah. He's like King
doesn't
Kong
matter.
essentially at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they're doing this, and like, there's that kind of like, there's that laugh ending that everybody's familiar with in terms of like what happens. That's like god awful
in the movie and in the TV
show.
series. Yeah.
And so like, you don't need it, but like the laugh end is one of the most cringeworthy things. And then again, to go along on this horny train of kind of like how they do this stuff, Lucy like puts her butt up, and then she puts her butt up.
You need to watch this episode for this, but I love Sean's description of it.
So uncomfortable with.
Lucy puts her butt up.
She puts her butt up, and then
Season 7.
Yeah, and then she shakes her tail that has like a little floof at the end of it underneath Henry's nose, and then she kind of tee-hee giggles. Everybody laughs.
Cut.
PSA. And I'm just like,
right to the PSA.
I just went, I went, shut up.
I wrote LOL at all the littles being terrified of Henry, and double LOL at Lucy tickling Henry's nose with her tail. She bout to get it. It was in my notes. She bout to get it.
It was like,
it's very wrong.
Yeah, it's wrong, but like if you watch this in all of the context, like watch the episode, you're just like, that is weird, and that is
it's
slightly
still weird out of nowhere.
It is slightly suggestive, and it's uncomfortable to watch. Any like laugh end is uncomfortable to watch. This is
extra
super cringeworthy.
Yeah. It was funny because we had, an hour and 45 minutes of context at this point. We're like, we get it, Littles. Like, we're good. Oh, you're going to throw that in at the end? Interesting. The only other thing that really made me laugh in this was Sean mentioned it earlier when the Dr. Hunter and McPherson or whoever show up at the door and the parents like dead-eyed stare at him and then they're just like, what do you want? He's like, I want to vacuum inside your walls to see if there are little people. They're like, yeah, come on in. And then Henry's like, wait, what? So they just straight up tell Henry like, this guy's going to check for mice and vacuum inside your walls. And they have to do this like whole thing where like, no, my turtle got in that. Like, it's ridiculous. But I love that he's just like, I'm just going to vacuum inside your walls. Like a normal person would say. That was pretty good. There was a moment though, because the littles do get kind of like sucked up into this vacuum. I thought the animation here was pretty cool. It really got close to like a Grave of the Fireflies moment. Because like Tom gets out of the dust and everything from the vacuum. And he's like looking for Lucy. He's like, Lucy, where are you? And he pulls back like detritus. They're all gray and covered in dust and everything picked up from the vacuum. He peels this stuff back and she's just like laying there, basically like lifeless and dead. And he's freaking out for a couple of seconds. And then turns out she's just joking with him. He's like, Lucy, say something. And she just says like gibberish. And then they go back to just being like goofy and fun again. But I was like, good God, like it was almost Grave of the Fireflies.
Again, close. It would have gave them some consequences.
Sure.
To actually deal with.
Sure. Or if one of them had been captured and they had to go rescue them back so they didn't have evidence. Anything like that. That's my major gripe. I don't know. I'm going to save it for my recommendation.
All right.
Or not.
Well, I think we're at the point now where we can actually talk and give a recommendation.
Yeah.
So if you are a new or returning listener.
Oh, wow. What a first episode for you.
Oh, boy. Get ready. For our recommendations, we can tell you that we recommend something. And we can say exactly why we would recommend and why we think it's a good use of your time. We can also say that we don't recommend something, and we'll give you some context and some details why we think that you could spend your time elsewhere, watching another cartoon. In fact, we could probably make a dozen recommendations at this point of
like
awesome
260,
stuff
probably.
Yeah, right?
Yep.
And then if we don't recommend something, we can go one step further, and we can give this the Who Framed Roger Rabbit style dip. Yes, the dip from the movie. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? We can get rid of a cartoon. We can erase it from the annals of cartoon history. We will only then really talk about it. We'll still talk about it on the show, but it'll always be in a negative light and tone. Again, looking at you, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, you're the worst cartoon. So, keeping that in mind, we have essentially two shows for us to talk about tonight. And so, Dave, I wanted to get your recommendation. How are you feeling about the movie? How are you feeling about the series? Big differences between them? Break it down for me.
Sure. So for the movie, there is a good movie in there somewhere.
Okay.
I think it could actually do well as even a live-action adaptation like The Borrowers did. I'm not saying The Borrowers adaptations were good. I'm just saying that they were made. However...
Shade.
Yeah, they're not great. Go back and watch the 90s one with John Goodman. It's not good. But there's something interesting here that's on the level of recent shows like even Lock and Key or Lemony Snicket. There's some interesting mythology here if they want to take it a little more seriously rather than be so goofy. Like you were saying, add some stakes to it.
Right.
Actually add some peril rather than just insane kind of oh, we almost died, but we got out of there again action. But this script is a mess for the movie. It starts out okay, and then maybe halfway through it just starts to crash. So I can't recommend the movie. I would say if you're interested, read The Borrowers, read The Littles, watch Secret World of Arrietty, which is really well done, or watch Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, or even Fern Gully, because they have a lot of those same things in common. So for me, it's not a recommend. What about you for the movie?
For the movie, I'm actually a recommend.
Interesting.
I thought because it was better done than the series by comparison, in terms of animation and just sort of the content. Yes, I kind of railed against the idea that it's constantly in crisis for the Littles, but just the premise that they build and that they posit and drop Henry into is so crazy that there was a part of me that was just all right, I want to see if something actually happens that builds consequence and some stakes on this. I want to see how they ultimately get out of it. Is it basically like watching a Disney Channel movie from the 90s where, a kid is pitted against an adult and then comes out, the victor? Yeah, 100%. And he's aided by a bunch of tiny little people, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought that their world and what mythology we did get was enough where if I thought to myself, yeah, I would watch more to learn something additional. Yes, I can definitely recommend the movie. I think if you're going to watch anything for the Littles, Here Come the Littles, 74 minutes, get your fix, get out.
I will say I watched it at 1.25 speed at one point, and I was still like, this is moving both too quickly for the narrative and too slow for me. So we're split on that one. But what do you think about the series before I give you my take? Boy.
I don't recommend it. I can't recommend it. It is very janky. It is very wonky. I felt like this is really only something that I'd be super interested in a feature. And I don't feel like the series continued or built off of or created anything new or additional that I hadn't seen, other than maybe exploring a little bit about the society that they had that was there.
Yeah.
But even then, I still don't feel like I got enough, and it wasn't interesting enough for me to want to continue to watch it further. So I do not recommend the Littles, the series.
We're pretty much in the same boat. Like, I love the premise. I think there's a good story there somewhere. It's just that this execution of it wasn't it. It somehow managed to take an interesting premise that should have some like peril and some stakes, and just made it kind of boring. It was relatively slow and boring. And then in addition to all the like technical wonk, I didn't really want to see more of it. Sorry, Ben. So that's a not recommend. So now we've got 2 don't recommends for the Littles, the series. Is that dip-worthy, though?
I don't think it's dip-worthy for me.
Same.
I don't feel like there was anything that was like, it was boring and it was slow, and I don't think it did anything. But I don't think it was like offensive or
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the fact that I watched it. I mean, the theme song alone should have been dipped.
This had a theme song?
Or the series. Oh, come on.
There it is.
Damn it. It's been dipped in Dave's mind.
That's right.
But yeah, I don't think it needs to be dipped.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. Okay. There you have it. Ben, thank you for telling us to watch a feature and then making us watch a feature plus the first episode of the series.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. You maniac. We're waiting for you to recommend us watch something else. I'm sure it'll probably be
Canadian.
Deke related again. Damn it.
I hope it's something that both of us can pronounce differently.
Yeah.
Like Kissifer.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you. This concludes and closes the very, very tiny, tiny book on the Littles. Yeah. Well, you heard him on this episode. Our friend Bobby Anthem. You can hear him on his paranormal podcast, Inhuman Experience, with his co-host Bobby Blades. Check him out on Twitter at IEXP_podcast. And Bobby has a solo show called In Search of My Lost Soul that is inside of the Inhumans podcast stream. It's a BOGO. It's a 2-for-1. Don't worry. It's wonderful. Please check it out. You can find Inhuman Experience on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Dave, what do you got going on?
Same old stuff, bud. If you're interested in my daily writings, you can check me out as an editor at collider.com. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can do so at DrClawMD. And if you got a bunch of free time on your hands and you're the reading sort, you can pick up The Science of Breaking Bad from MIT Press, available wherever books are sold. What else is going on with you, bud?
Oh, man. Well, I am not doing improv.
Yeah.
I perform live improv comedy in Washington, D.C., with a group that's called Nox. That's NOX ! But guess what? Nobody is doing anything right now. So that is fine and to be understood.
Can I ask a question for our listeners out there if they're still listening?
Please.
What are you guys up to? If you're stuck at home, like, what are you doing with your time? Are you working on something you've always wanted to do? Did you always want to start a podcast with your friends and you're finally doing it? Did you always want to write that book that you've been thinking about for years and you're finally doing it, or not? I'd love to hear from you guys. Let us know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to know how you guys are trying to keep yourself sane.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to work out, get some writing done.
That's great. I've been building a small miniature city inside my walls.
Damn it.
So, normal.
Yeah, completely checks out.
Yeah.
But you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sean Paul Ellis, as well as also I do have a comedy podcast that the first season is out now. It is called The Bureau. You can check out, I think all 8 episodes have been published and are available to consume right now. Who knows? We want to do a second season, but we all can't get together in the same room right now to actually be able to do it. So we will eventually, because I'm sure a lot of you are listening and saying, but you and Dave aren't in the same room when you record. And to that I say, well, keen ear listener. But at the same time, this requires a little bit more in terms of production. So,
Yeah.
But you can give that a listen. You can listen anywhere, that you download podcasts. Check out The Bureau. If you like Earwolf's The Teacher's Lounge, it's very similar to that, but just with a bunch of people who happen to work for the FBI. Want to support us? Oh, man, bet you do. Thanks for doing that. You can swing on over to our Patreon page, and you can search Saturday Morning Cartoons, become a patron. Thank you. We appreciate it. Also, just tell a friend. I mean, we don't understand how Apple iTunes reviews work, and we never will. 6 years in, we gave up. But you can also go over there and leave us a review. We do read them, and we get a great chuckle and laugh out of them. So thank you in advance. But just tell a friend. We'd prefer that you tell a friend and that they get excited about the show in the same way that you enjoy listening to the show. You can slide into our DMs on Twitter at Morning Tunes. Remember, that's morning with a U. Check out our Instagram and Facebook at Saturday Morning Cartoons. Drop us an old-fashioned email to SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. You can find all these links in the link tree, which is in the bio for all of our social media sites. And as always, you can listen to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, anywhere fine podcasts are sold. Thank you guys so much for listening.
More listener requests next week?
Yeah, I think we're going to do more listener requests.
We have to.
We got to.
I don't want to go to jail for cartoon-related offenses.
Yeah, you're right. We just got another legal notice coming in from our cartoon lawyers that says it's mandatory fun.
Yeah.
So here we go. Oh, gosh. Well, stay safe. Thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
See ya. I'm going to give you a little tickle with my tail.
Oh, do them little cheeks clap.
Hey, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to Saturday Morning Cartoons. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to transform and roll out.